everyone, welcome to our graphic design workshop. My name is Layna, I'm the MCR president.
And I'm Abby, and I'm the PR director.
So first off, when we're talking about graphic design, obviously we want to relate it back to advocacy. And so you want to make sure that your graphic is communicating the message in an eye-catching and simple manner so that people pay attention to it. You want to use these strategies to make sure that you promote, grow, and inform about your organization. Advocacy relies on passionate, informed, and participatory constituents. So kind of this is a great way to make a first impact and get someone really passionate about whatever you're posting about. Obviously, posting graphic is way easier than handing out a ton of flyers, and so it's a great way and a more environmentally friendly way to get the word out to a large audience.
Good graphic design platforms to use. Canva is free. It has a ton of templates, so it's really easy to get a professional and easy graphic, but there is less room for flexibility. So if you are a bit more experienced in the graphics department, I would recommend Pixar, which is like the free version of Photoshop. It's online. It does take a lot of storage from your computer, and there are no templates, so it's a little harder to have a polished design if you're not as experienced, but it does allow for more creativity. And then Photoshop is $10 a month, but life hack, you can get a free week over and over and over again if you keep making a fake email to use for it. But it's not necessary for most graphic work, and we do most of the time work with Canva just because it's easy.
So when we are talking about Canva, we have some key features that we want to make sure we highlight with you guys. First, on the left, obviously, like Abby was talking about, the templates are a major plus. They're a great way to make any kind of beginner get started in graphic design, and great for any organizational work as well. Super easy to plug text in there. Similarly, you'll see on the right, if you change the transparency in the top right of your screen, it almost looks as if it's a different color, but in reality, if you put anything behind it, which we'll talk about in the next slide, you can actually see it under that. And so it's a great way to make it kind of look a little bit less flat and pop out a little bit more. So like I was just saying, if you look on the right side, you can see we put the little white circle behind the MCR logo using the position part where you can do things backwards and forwards, and that's a great way to layer things. And then on the left side, you'll see the letter and line height, which is a great way to change up the font and make sure your spacing is lining up with whatever you're posting. And it's a great way to kind of make a font versatile instead of just using the same thing over and over again.
At this point, you can pause it. We're going to do a design activity where you'll have 5 minutes to create a graphic. We'll give you the who, what, where, and when. And at the end of the workshop, we'll go back and review it.
So you can see on this slide every detail that you'll need to put on there. Obviously, it's nice and short and sweet, so you don't have to add too much, but you can pause now and take 5 minutes to do that.
Okay, so now that you have paused it and are now back, you should review, is your graphic eye-catching? Would you stop and look at it if it was on your social media feed? Does it include all the info that we gave you? And is it professional and polished enough to put on an organization's social media?
So now we'll talk a bit about the key elements of an effective graphic.
The color scheme is really important. I usually like to pick 2 main colors and then add 2 variations of those colors. So like dark purple, dark green, light green, something like that. In Canva, a lot of the times the templates will come with 4 given colors, as you can see on the left. And then you can use the gradient to kind of play around with exactly what colors you want to use. One of the fun, professional, useful things you can do is you can use the hex code or the color code that you can see at the bottom right. That gives you the ability in between platforms to use the exact same shade of a color. And so the MCR blue code is listed down below. That's what we use.
So another thing you want to make sure you're doing effectively is obviously providing the information. So what you want to make sure you're not doing is putting a paragraph of text on a graphic that's going to be really too much to look at and also just kind of get boring. So what you want to do is instead use short, quick sentences that are quick to look at. You also want to make sure you don't have any overlapping text. So you want to make sure you have effective spacing between all your separate statements and that things are clear to read. Similarly, in terms of text, you want to make sure that you aren't using the same text throughout the entire graphic. Instead, I would highly recommend using font families, which is bold, italicized, underline, anything like that, that is the same font, just different versions, or fonts that you think go well together.
Keeping it clear and to the point. Realistically, no one stops to read all the nitty-gritty details, so you want to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. So some of the things that I like to do when I'm making the title, I make it the largest piece of text, so that's the first thing they'll see. It's the first thing they read, probably in bold, so it looks proportionally larger. When you have explanatory text, like you're explaining what the purpose of an event is, why it's happening, you could put that in italics or a font family, which Layna will talk about. And one of the things I like to do when you're including a link, you can use tinyurl.com and customize exactly what you want your link to look like so someone can easily type it into their search bar instead of having a bajillion letters and numbers.
So another thing you want to make sure you're doing is keeping it professional. So you want to make sure you're using clear fonts. You'll see I provided some options that I think aren't great and some that I think are much better. So the top one, probably a little too casual, could also be a little difficult to read. The second one down, I think, can be useful in some circumstances, but I think generally it's not super professional. The bottom two, I think the third one is great for the title, like Abby was saying. And then the last one I think is really good for body text. Similarly, you want to avoid a busy graphic. That can look like too many colors, a lot of shapes, super wordy, things like that. So instead, you want to make sure you're sticking to your color scheme like Abby was talking about. You want to use the templates that are provided to you. You don't want to mess with those too much. And you want to highlight key information. And so I don't mean literally highlight it yellow, but bolding it, italicizing it, underlining it, anything like that can be super great in terms of getting someone to look at that, and that can be eye-catching. You can use different colors, you can use shadows. There's lots of options to make sure that those key details are sticking out.
Keeping it creative, or spicy, as I like to say. One of the things we have done in the past, as you can see with the policy paper and press release workshop, is you can play around with the transparency of the background, like Layna was talking about. And so you can include a picture from an MCR meeting to kind of tie in a theme of, if you're working with a different organization, you tie in a theme of that organization with the graphic. Simple line drawings and animations are good to fill empty space in the corners. And then on the right, as you can see, this was a 9-post project that we did on Instagram, and we kind of played around a little bit with interconnecting the first slide. And so that way you can tell it's all one project, but it each has its own post and its own set of information. Platforms for video work. iMovie is on Apple products. It is free and it's got a great interface. It's very easy to self-teach. There are also a lot of tutorials on YouTube that you could look up if you're interested in them. There's not as much flexibility with it because Apple does want you to buy the expensive version, which is Final Cut Pro. It's a $300 one-time fee, and it's the same interface, but it's got a lot more flexibility and it has a lot more professional tools. And then for animations, if you want to do something simple, I recommend Animationist. It's a little tricky to work with, and it might take you a while to get used to it, but it's $25, which isn't too bad, and is compatible with most operating systems, and it will get the job done if you're doing something simple.
So now we're going to show you a couple of graphics that I have made, so we are not saying that anyone else's graphics are bad. And you can just take a quick second to judge based on what you've learned if you think these are good graphics, great graphics, meh, you know, in between graphics, and then bad graphics. So if you want to take a second here and think about that, and then we'll show you the answer. Oops. So this is a graphic that we think is not great, but it's not terrible. This has a bit too much going on. There's a lot of information. There's really consistent font use, and so it's not super eye-catching. The spacing isn't great, things like that. So those are things you might want to keep an eye out for.
I like the stars, they're a nice touch.
Here's another post. This is about the Kids Ride Free initiative. So you can take another second here to think about that.
Love this one.
And then this is a graphic we said was good. It's eye-catching. The angle of the bus makes it look like it's not just flat to the screen. It's a very simple, there's not too much to read here, and just gets the point across.
And this is a good, this is a good example of like what Layna was talking about with font families, where the did you know font, you might not want to use that in a graphic talking about an upcoming board meeting or something like that. But the context of this graphic makes sense to use that font. So context is everything.
Context is key. Here you'll see another graphic. You can take a second to take a look at this one. And this is a graphic we said was not a great graphic. I do not like this graphic. We had some people in our workshop have mixed feelings about it, and you are free to have your own as well. I think that there's a little too much going on. It's a little inconsistent. It's not my favorite graphic I've ever made. But I think that there's also something cool about mixing medias with the idea of paper and social media. And so do I think someone can make a 10 times better version of this? For sure. I just don't think I did it. But once again, you'll see at least with the arrow, we have the MCR blue, like Abby was saying. So I was able to carry that over because of our color code.
Layna got roasted for that one in the workshop.
I did. Totally deserving. So for this last one, you can take a look as well. Pause for a quick second. And we said that this was a great graphic. I love this graphic. We made it for an organization that asked us to post about their events, which is something that oftentimes you'll get asked to do as well. I know some people in our workshop had mixed feelings. Some thought there was too much going on here. I really like it. I think that the color scheme is very nice. I think that the mixing fonts is good. And generally, I just think it's a good way to kind of get enough details in a graphic, but not be overwhelming.
I love that graphic too. Okay, so now you're gonna go back to the initial graphic that you did a little bit earlier in the workshop, and you're gonna assess what you would do differently. If you want to take a minute to pause, you can take 5 more minutes and revamp it, play with letter spacing, colors, anything that you feel like you've taken away from this workshop and you can now apply to that graphic.
So now that you've come back, obviously, unfortunately, we can't answer your questions live, but you can reach us at MCR-SGA. Our email is mcr.sga@gmail.com. You can find our social medias, our website, and there's lots of ways to still get involved, hopefully whenever you're watching this. And so we would highly recommend checking out our social media for any upcoming events. We will be doing rolling applications throughout the year if you want to get involved. And thank you for watching.